Tuesday morning, and that's when we always talk to Dr. John Braccio over to drjohnb.com, Regional Psychological Services in East Lansing. How not to argue with an arguer. Oh, boy, when you, Doc, you said you had this one coming, I said, I didn't say it to the wife because they're mainly on her side of the family. We got a couple of arguers. I call them professional arguers. It's you see them coming to Thanksgiving or any family gathering, and you just sort of go, oh, man, how do you deal with those folks?
Well, some of them even have, it seems to be a gleam in their eye, okay? These are people we know and may even love, but they just seem to live to argue. They're arguers. They thrive on arguments. They're not necessarily bad persons at all, Mike, but they thrive on debating or challenging ideas just to cause a stir or prove they are always right and great thinkers. There are even some people we may try to stay away from, like, oh, no, here comes Uncle Chucky, okay, in conversations just so we do not have to argue whatever might be on the menu of arguments for the day. For this discussion, we're really eliminating the totally rude and offensive person who does not argue in an honorable manner, but loves to make derogatory comments and simply tries to put you down or always win the argument. We're not talking about that person, no. We're really talking about the person who likes to argue and debate whatever it might be. They may be very pleasant people most of the time. It can be anybody. They can be your spouse, they can be your parent, child, or sibling. The following are some suggestions on what you might do to not argue when you have an arguing friend, associate, family member, or person you encounter in life who wants to argue. And these people really are out there. We all know them. I remember my Uncle Glenn used to say, you could say to someone, what a beautiful day. And they'd say, prove it. It's going to rain later today or something like that. They just can't take it, in a positive way. So what do? Well, you try to make some neutral statement to turn the conversation away from the point of, possible contention. If the person brings up something negative, you just say, well, let's kind of move on and talk a little bit about this football game or the fact that the Panthers just won some tournament or something. And then if you indicate some general agreement to try to move on, like person says, taxes are really too high these days, you might say, well, certainly a lot of people that would agree to that. Let's kind of come over here and talk about something else, okay? And do not become defensive and fall prey to the arguer and start arguing. Let's say your kids are in the school, and then someone's there saying, that school, all they do is do drugs and drink and party, and nobody studies, and the teachers are all bad. Well, you could really strongly disagree with that, but you don't want to get into the arguing. You can say, well, there may be some people who think that. You just don't want to fall into the argument. And then you might ask to delay the discussion to a later time, like, hey, come on, let's go get a margarita over here and we'll talk about this.
No, you don't want to get them drunk because then they'll really start talking. You don't want that either.
Well, you'll just, if you do, you just put a tiny little bit of tequila in there, try to keep going. But you're right. Mike, you're right. But the point is you're trying to move them. Okay, then let's go get a pop over here, okay?
Yeah, coffee.
Coffee, they might say, well, that nicotine is really bad. Did you know that? I'll tell you all the bad things about that. But anyway, you can ask questions to hopefully not allow the arguer the opportunity to argue. So if they come out, and then let's back on the tax example. Taxes are too high. You can say, well, what do you mean? Where do you think it is? What might we do differently? What would your plan be? Just kind of question them to death so they're not going to be fighting and arguing with you. And then make sure you stay calm and don't get emotionally upset, because they can really say things that are really, really offensive. Nobody in your family ever seems to really care about things enough to want to change them. Do you know that? Well, you might come out for your first thought would be, well, that's really not true at all. We work, we do things, we're active in the community, but you just don't want to get into that argument. You could say, well, I guess you might think that, we try to do things, but just make sure that you don't get hot-headed yourself as you get into the argument, because the person wants you to. They want you to get going because they love to debate. They love to argue. They don't carry afterwards the feelings. Because a lot of people, if you're arguing with them, they thrive on it, but other people carry it and they're wounded and they feel bad and the whole works. Maybe most people. So try not to get involved in these arguments. And then another thing, arguments on religion and politics are politically wise to stay away from on most occasions because you're really not going to change someone. So as a whole, the thing here is, one, you want to stay away from the arguer. Techniques and strategies to kind of move forward with them, because otherwise when they come over, they'll say, hey, come on over here, Mike. I was thinking about how I'd run your radio program different. How does that sound? You've got 80 good things, but there are 4 things I do differently. Now let's sit down for 4 or 5 hours and debate this issue. And you're then going to say, oh my goodness, this is not what I want to do. It's like a taxi cab driver that they want you to take a ride in their taxi. Okay, I don't want to talk about my work or anything right now. So you just have to kind of deal with the arguer. You have to find ways to get away from them, because a lot of them are really good people. They thrive on fault finding. They thrive on debate. And generally, if you want to have a good day, one, you want to stay away from them, but you really do need some techniques not to get involved short of yelling and getting angry, because a lot of times that just gets them going more. Like, oh, yeah, you're not willing to admit this whole thing. You want to just fight and you're going to get a gaslight me. That's what you're trying to do. So you really have to work at trying to, extricate yourself from the situation and just realize that people like this. There are people that they just like to argue. They thrive on finding things to debate, and it doesn't bother them at all. I mean, they'll go from argument to argument and sleep very well at night and won't even think about it afterwards. They'll just wake up in the morning thinking of a new menu. Some people get up in the morning, I think I'm going to try and have a good day. I'm going to try and work today. I'm going to try to help people out. I'm going to try and do good deeds. I'm going to run the best radio show like I do at 13:20 in the morning. Okay, that type thing.
Most of the time we don't care.
But happens in the morning. But in the morning, there are a lot of people that really, even if they're not thinking this, consciously. Well, yeah. I'll tell you this, there's these things not working today or things I'm not happy with today, and I'll tell you I'm going to talk to Billy and I'm going to talk to Chucky, and as soon as I get with my spouse here or my partner, I'm going to really raise some issues here. I'll tell you that. There are a lot of things wrong in the world, and I might just as well bring them up. And there are people that actually even enjoy it. They enjoy getting people going. They just thrive on it. And we're not talking about the people that put you down, call you a dummy, or derogatory. No, they're the argumentative, kind of caloric kind of a personality that just can get people going. You want to stay away from them or find techniques to watch out for, because sometimes they're so good at this that you, at the end of the day, will, if you're talking to your spouse or a friend, you might say, I can't believe how Mary got me into that debate on the use of plastics in the world, this type thing. I mean,
unless, of course, you happen to be a debater and arguer yourself. Two of those people finding each other at a party is something to really go and stay away from.
Well, that is right. If you get two of them together, I wasn't thinking today about those two. Well, those, my goodness, they'll get together purposely and debate things. Unfortunately, for the rest of us, are people that don't like to be debating. Most people aren't that way. But if you could get the two together, like, well, good to see you, Bill. And Mary's here too, and she's had a bunch of concerns over here too. Why don't you two go over there and settle the world's problems over there while we just kind of sit here and enjoy.
I'm gonna have a cocktail.
I can enjoy a little fun and toddy or whatever we're going to do over here. So, yes, it's good if I already thought about that. If you invite people over, you might want to invite two arguers and sit them together and introduce them. And
cancel each other out.
But again, there are people like this. And the thing about this is another thing. There's just kind of annoyance, and there may be wonderful people. We don't think about it that much, but you talk to people, and I'm sure you do, they'll say, I can't believe that he or she got me into that same argument and over again. It could be a spouse, it could be a friend, it could be whoever.
And I do think there is a time and a place for it. I mean, without any kind of debate, then we got nothing. But, you're right. It can get overwhelming. And Dr. John Braccio, we are up on time, Doc. Find him on the web, drjohnb.com. If, you want some more in-depth exploration of this or any other problems, psychology-wise, regional psychological services in East Lansing. There you folks. Doc, we're up on time as always. It flies by, but always a pleasure.
Good talking to you, my friend, and no arguing today, okay?
No. Oh, yeah? Well, what if I want to argue? Oh, yeah? No, I'm just kidding. Oh, gee. Thanks a lot, Doc. We'll talk again next week.
Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye. 1320 WILS.